Hello there! Welcome back to Charles Circle, and welcome back to Captain of Industry. Last time, we focused on upgrading for the final time our research labs. These are now Research Lab 4. They take a whole bunch of lab equipment 4 as well, which we set up, but they upgrade, or they unlock, all of these final tier technologies in the game. It's pretty exciting. We immediately unlocked and implemented 2 of them. The final upgrade to our assemblies, doubling our throughput again, and removing the need for any workers whatsoever in each of them, freeing them up to do a whole bunch of more productive stuff. And we also upgraded our microchip setup to microchip machines 2, which triples the throughput. Those have already had a great impact on our base. And then along the way, we also managed to sort of scramble together a bit of a med supplies 2 setup that I'm sure we'll have to continue to improve over time, but we did start at least providing them, improving the amount of unity that we are getting from our citizens there. And we also built our first statue of maintenance, which is a lovely little addition to our sort of welcome center zone. Here at the base where we started the game. And man, have I been thinking about this is where the shipyard started, right? This is where we started the game, and it's really come a long way. This is not what this island used to look like. I've been really enjoying and looking back on sort of the progress we've made so far. It's been a very fun ride, so thank you for coming along. I've certainly enjoyed it. But yeah, we continue to take further steps today, right? And sort of speaking of which, the focus of today will be to set the groundwork for our last big playthrough, or project of the playthrough, the space station, right? And so this is going to require quite a few things along the way. I mean, it's going to require, frankly, almost a dozen technologies all told over the course of several episodes here, I promise, for this project. But we're going to take the first of those steps today, and maybe the second and third too. Let's see how far we get. But that first step is aluminum smelting. So we'll talk through exactly what we're going to use it for all the way through, but there's quite a few pieces that require as an input this final step in this processing chain, simply called aluminum. Aluminum ingots, bars, whatever you want to call it. This is the foundation of a lot of what we're going to do going forward. And we can use it for a couple other things along the way. Certainly we'll do that, but we need to set it up first. As you can see, I've paved an area where we're going to make it, and the fact that it's coastal and set up next to our other imports should probably give you a clue that while we absolutely could mine it locally, and may very well eventually make use of that, our 2 deposits here and out here aren't incredibly conveniently located. They're certainly usable, and like I said, once we get more conveniently close to them by powering through all of these various deposits, we'll probably end up using it. But the other thing we could do, right, is import it, either from a world mine, which there is at least one of out here somewhere. I've seen a couple of them, but as you can tell by here's one, not knowing exactly where it is off the top of my head, that's not what we're going to do. There are contracts, right? And going with the theme of the last few episodes, we are going to rely on those going forward because as much as we can, they are super sustainable, right? As long as we can continue to provide all of the export resources we need, we will never have to worry about it running out, which is a very lovely thing. And some of these are better or worse, 100%. So we want to look at them and see which is the export that we would like to provide. We'll go, it's all the same ratios, but we'll use the biggest cargo ship available to us, so these are the rough numbers we'll be talking about. So you can see that you can exchange iron ore kind of 1-to-1. You can do that for a lot of the ores, by the way. That's a chunk of gold, although obviously a pretty decent ratio. It's just that gold is kind of compressed compared to gold ore, so this is okay. It's not great. This is a decent ratio, but this starts to add up, right? The various components that go into this much household appliances. And we're already using household appliances to get our wood import. We could make that work. We could. We certainly don't make these composite cores yet. And as you can see, they are also quite expensive down the line. But you know what we make, and a pretty decent amount of, is construction parts 4. And what is this ratio? That's closer to 100x than the 10x we're looking at for some of these other ones. That's insane. And as we know, we make a pretty good amount of this and use a pretty good amount of this all the dang time. We've got a full 5K just sitting here, and without even fully upgrading to our highest tier set of assemblies here, we're only talking about 10 cycles of an assembly 4 to pull in 5K ore. So yeah, obviously we're gonna do that, right? So we'll set this up roughly here. I'll make adjustments when I jump into the time lapse. But once we have brought in the ore, right, what do we have to do next? Well, it is, as most of these advanced ores are, it is one of those ores you need to crush first to pre-process. So first thing we'll do, we'll take bauxite, we'll turn it into bauxite powder in a crusher. The next thing we'll do, in that same 1-to-1 ratio, is we'll put it into a chem plant 2 and mix it with brine, yet another reason to be coastal for what that's worth, and we'll get this hydrated alumina and some red mud. We'll talk about sourcing the brine here in a moment. But let's talk about the outputs first. We'll skip the red mud, but we'll come back to it. The hydrated alumina is then the 1-to-1 input into a rotary kiln. We know these from our concrete slabs factory. You can fuel it with either fuel gas or hydrogen. We'll have a conversation about that in a moment, but let's just place this down for a moment. Again, 1-to-1, 36, 36, and then you get out this alumina 24. That is a 1-to-1 input into an aluminum cell. This is pretty straightforward so far, right? Very easy ratios. This massive building takes a pretty decent chunk of graphite, frankly, and it makes your molten aluminum, a little CO2 as a byproduct. This molten aluminum, 1-to-1, just goes into a simple metal caster. It's quite the production chain, I will say, to end up in a single metal caster. Consider how many metal casters we have at the end of something like a steel plant. But ultimately, this is pretty much it. It's very linear, right? So we have a couple byproducts. Let's talk about this red mud. It may have made you think, oh, it looks like toxic slurry or wastewater just from the icon. And yes, but it actually goes into a settling tank, and you can mix it with seawater and some limestone just to turn it into slag, because if you dump it directly, that's a pollutant. Or if we provide acid, which is a little bit more valuable, but frankly easier to provide in some ways than seawater, we get a little bit less slag, but we actually get crushed iron ore coming out of it. And we low-key prepared for this last time when we built our steel capacity out here with this buffer accessible to trucks. Now we'll have to set it up so that there's actually room to deliver, or we could simply run it by belt if we built it right next door, which we are roughly going to do. But that's a more productive use for iron ore. Just comes at the expense of a bit of acid. So we know that sulfur is getting pretty valuable for us, a little bit scarce, but we also have lots of acid in this area. And if we can solve our sulfur scarcity problem, we'll come back to that in a bit, this is a fine synergistic thing to do right next door. So we're into that. Now this makes CO2. We'll have to sink that, turn it into graphite, recycle it back into this loop. Very easy to do right away on site. And that plays into our sort of two options here. We could also do fuel gas, and instead of getting depleted steam, we would get CO2. And since we're gonna have to process it anyway, this is simpler, right? we have, or starting to have, a bit of a surplus of hydrogen. We have started to make it almost our default fuel for our cargo ships, which is pretty great. We certainly have a decent amount of it coming out of our refinery at this point, and most places that we either need oxygen or just want to provide hydrogen on site, we're simply using these electrolyzer 2s and admittedly quite a bit of power to make hydrogen out of water in pretty small volumes. So it's pretty straightforward to provide hydrogen. But I think in this particular case, because we also still have a decent amount of fuel gas coming out of both our farming recycling setup and our refinery, I think we will probably actually run this on fuel gas, not because there's a huge difference in the two fuel sources when you consider the scale of our entire base, but because it's just going to make dealing with the byproduct slightly simpler. We don't need to run our depleted steam over to or include a new cooling tower and recycle water back. It's marginally simpler. Either of these is a completely valid recipe. So the other thing we should think about is how we're sourcing this brine. Now, you just make brine out of a desalinator right by the coast, and that's great. We're also just dumping tons of brine pretty continuously from a few of these coastal setups anyway. So maybe we should consider at least trying to pipe that excess over here before dumping it. And if that doesn't end up providing enough, and we'll see, it may very well not, 24 is a decent volume if we're going to be doing this continuously, then we'll add our own desalinator over here as well. But I'd like to at least give it a shot first without it. So if this is basically our pretty linear production chain, 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1, how many of these should we make? Is 24 aluminum at the very end enough? Well, let's start to talk about the things that it goes into, right? So eventually, we are going to need to make these, here they are, station parts, right? This is how we make a space station. It requires these 3 parts, none of which we make yet. Now, solar cells we could have made a long time ago, we've just chosen not to. They mostly are made up of silicon poly, a little bit of steel, a little bit of glass. We don't really use them because they just make a very small amount of power, frankly. But that is something you can do. And when you're talking about a space station, it is the thing you have to do, right? So easy enough. We have lots of extra silicon from our electronics factory far off in the distance, right? But we don't make either this composite core or this chemical fuel yet. This chemical fuel takes a decent chunk of aluminum. It's 1 to 1, but we don't need a ton of it in the space station part recipe necessarily. It's the smallest ingredient. This is pretty expensive on ammonia, though, and fuel gas. We're going to come back to this in step 2 after we're done with the aluminum. But this isn't going to be a huge driver. It is a small driver, but not a huge one. So in 2 space station parts, it will take half an aluminum for the chemical fuel, because this is 1 to 2. We won't need anything from the solar cell. So how about the composite core, though? The composite core takes a little bit of electronics too, fine. We seem to be making that in surplus. If we have to reinforce it, we will. We definitely have a bit of extra steel lying around, and this composite panel in highest volume is a new thing for us, and wouldn't you look at that, it's made of aluminum. So if we need 4 composite cores to make 2 station parts, and we need 8 composite panels to make 4 composite core basics, 8 to 2, excuse me, where are we? 8 to 2, 1 to 1. Okay. So we need 4 aluminum from composite cores to make 1 station part, and we need half from a chemical. So we need 4.5 to make a station part. Okay. So that means we could make 6 station parts a minute-ish with one of these. That doesn't, however, take into account, well, either the further space station upgrades, the whole parts 2, there's a yellow, right? We go from white to yellow in everything we make. The yellow stage of station parts is a little bit more expensive. Some other stuff goes into it too. Let's cross that bridge later. But we also use aluminum for some other stuff, potentially, right? Including consumer electronics. And we haven't researched this yet, but we easily can. 1 to 2 to make consumer electronics. That, I have a feeling, and we won't be able to show our exact demand until we unlock it. That, I have a feeling, though, is going to scale up, right? If you look at, I don't know, just to gut check things, all these other stuff we supply, we need, you know, how much, for example, do we need for household goods? Well, we need 43. We need 62 household goods. We need 43, household appliances. How many luxury goods? It's a more recent, smaller one. Well, 22, and that takes gold, and gold's a pretty small volume but intense resource. Okay. So what would have to be true, basically, for us to believe that we need a whole line of aluminum dedicated basically just to consumer electronics? Well, one whole line of 24 could do 8 times 6, 48. If this number ends up being 48, I'm not going to be surprised. Are you? So I think we should probably do 2 lines right away, but also absolutely have room for, and maybe even expect, that we'll need to do 4 in total. So what I'm going to do now then, having given sort of the logic for the sourcing, the layout, the scale, I'm going to actually get this all blueprinted, and then we will walk through the actual layout in a moment, and then we'll build it, or at least whatever fraction of it we decide we want right away. So I'll be right back. Okay, I think we're back. I think this works. Let's slowly unpause here and walk you through it. So, the ore will arrive by ship. As we said, we'll fuel that by hydrogen, and then it will be crushed out here after running through a quick bauxite buffer. So that'll all get crushed. Again, this is all 1-to-1. There's 4 of each of these machines all the way through. It gets crushed. It gets hydrated. It gets dehydrated, I suppose. And then it gets melted. And then it gets casted, right? And it flows all the way out through here to a unit storage, which I think just because it's going to bother me, we will move 1. Okay, so what else happens here? Well, all of this excess red mud gets processed. This is quite the module, by the way. Oh shoot, and I'm realizing actually there's one extra row here, and that's why everything was off. One moment. These are the super critical moves I make to make sure that everything is still gorgeous, right? All right, so we process all of this in a series of settling tanks, right? Each one of these, 36, takes 2 of these, 18. So it's quite the module, for sure. And it takes acid, limestone, and it makes slag and crushed iron ore. We're running the crushed iron ore actually immediately over here to our steel plant. I don't expect it'll back up. It's prioritized to be used, and we need to make steel pretty continuously. I know this one tends to back up a little bit because it's the furthest away. It's the one that gets taken from the least, but maybe we'll just try to push a little bit out of here so that it's still working continuously. We'll keep an eye on it, for sure. And if we have to adjust, we'll adjust, as always. Slag is here, we dump it. We bring in limestone, we bring in graphite, although we prioritize the recycled CO2, which is conveniently here, right in the middle, trying to make good use of the dead space. And we bring in acid. This is the first time we aren't going to make acid on site. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this, but the amount of acid that we're going to need, 8 times 12, 96, right, is not a convenient number, honestly, for a mixer. It's just more than 1. It's about the same amount overall of transport that we would need to move stuff around. We don't have water conveniently already here. I mean, I guess there's some here. I don't know. If this ends up being problematic, well, maybe we'll run a water pipe and some sulfur here. Let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. The fuel gas will go here as well, and then our big brine storage, just because this is spiky, and we're going to go through a lot, our big brine storage will be here. And this takes the brine outputs of our entire nuclear setup. It's only 6, but this is, what, is this 32 of them? There's quite a few, right? Yeah, so 16 per row. So 32 times 6 is, you know, what is that, 200-ish? So we're going to, of course, still dump it if we have to. This capacity should still be sufficient. If it was before, it will be again. But we'll at least try to run it through here before we dump it. And I have a feeling, if anything, this isn't going to be enough. So let's see. If we need to, we can truck some in if it's occasional. If it's constant, I don't want to do it. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so this is it. Now, as a reminder, we don't need all of this right away. I think we're going to build half right away. And in fact, you'll notice I didn't even put casters on these two at the end. That is a bit of a sneak preview because one of the things I didn't talk about, but that we absolutely will eventually need, is a little bit of molten aluminum to mix with titanium to make titanium alloy, which is how you actually make the various pieces of titanium product that go into the very advanced parts. So I'm kind of thinking, just sort of let you inside my brain here for a moment, I'm kind of thinking we'll do titanium right here because the two need to sort of run together, and so that's why these two, particularly facing this direction, are going to be free for that. Okay. Let's build pretty much everything infrastructure-wise. We'll save the machines on this side, and that's pretty much it. Just build everything else. I suppose we only need 4 of these right away, too. I don't mind if we build some extra belts along the way. We certainly have the parts, so no big deal. Woo! Let's let that rip. Cool. So, what else do we want to do in the meanwhile? Well, we just unlocked a ship upgrade. I don't know if you just saw, but we started last time. Let's increase our ship's engine. Yeah, this is all very doable stuff. This isn't going to get us, this will get us some range, right? But it isn't going to get us better combat. So our battle score is still 560. Let's see what that, if anything, opens up for us here. So these are all still 600 or above blockers. So I'm actually not sure if we're going to get, yeah, much of anything unlocked properly here with that, but fine. Let's at least get it moving. That's okay. The other thing we can look at, and by the way, check this out. The oil is very nearly gone again already. The other thing we can look at is this iron mine transition. I let the game run a little bit just so that we could, well, pave that area, charge up on some construction buffer, and finish this little land bridge, because this is our next iron mine, because this one is very much dead. So we have kind of a, I suppose, an interesting couple of options here for iron ore supply in the first place. One, by the way, the very simplest, is to just keep importing it this way, right? And allow export from here and allow trucks to run that over here. That's possible. And for what it's worth, this is only full right now because we had some left over in the shipyard right now, and the trucks are running that over. That obviously will not last for forever. So we could just do that. We actually don't have to mine this at all. Now we're going to because we have the trucks, and why wouldn't we? It'll save us on some of the parts we'd otherwise have to trade. But keeping in mind that this is not like mission critical and that we have a backfill if there are any sort of supply issues in the short term, the question then becomes, well, do we bring it over here to this ore sorting plant? Pretty large, right? Distance, I mean, pretty far, rather, would be the right word to use there, for our trucks to run out like that. The other thing to do would be to set up a new set of infrastructure, a new ore sorter, and a new set of train stations out here, running tracks, I guess, along this little land bridge. And in the future, we might want to do that because there's a lot of stuff in this area. By the way, this is where our next coal mine is. Not that we're really hurting for that right now, but we're halfway through this. So we'll have to get over here eventually. And when we're over here eventually, this is uranium, right? We like that. So what I'm kind of thinking, gold, limestone, sand, what I'm kind of thinking is, in the longer term, maybe we set up a proper multi or massive mining complex type of thing out this way that would help take advantage of the iron ore. But in the meanwhile, particularly because it's not super critical, maybe we just let our large trucks run it over here and then train it down as we had been doing. So I think that's what we're going to do for a bit, at least try it out, right? And if it's not our favorite setup ever, we can always change that. But let's see how it goes first. So with that in mind, I'm going to tell them to start mining right over here. You can stop doing this. Brilliant. That should still run here. In fact, it does. Good. Oh, I need to reinstall our mine train. I did remove it for traffic purposes since it was running empty, but obviously that will no longer be the case. Let me set it back up here. And there it goes. All right, so now it is full immediately already, right? Because, yeah, we have tons of it. And it'll run on hydrogen when it gets back. Oh, it already went once. That's bauxite, all right. Oh, I guess we ended up building the extra crusher. Oh well, no problem. What do we miss here? Oh, nice. Cool. All right, so this is working. We are running out our rated alumina. Wow. Okay, so that's good. I think we must have allowed trucks. Let's say only keep full if it's very low, because I kind of want to see if this works by itself. And maybe it does, because we didn't actually tell anyone to bring anything over here. We just allowed it, and it's not like we're pushing brine out of any other storages. So I think that might actually, potentially, be really net positive. Like, I think we are actually producing this amount of brine. So cool. Who knows? We have to run this for a while. We have to get all 4 machines up before we're super comfortable with it, but I think we're feeling okay about that. Really chipping away at our copper mine here too. Lots left, so no big deal there. But yeah, filling up on all the construction parts and then all of the electronics. Really went through copper there for a minute. It was kind of good to stress test our whole throughput situation, but yeah, for sure. This is good news too, though. In fact, I'm even going to allow more servers to be built, but we have obviously quite the stockpile here of Electronics 3. So what we should do is find out just how poorly it will run if we try to have all of our labs going at once. Obviously workers is an issue there. So I think what we'll do is, with that many, I'm kind of curious, like, should we... I know if we do a whole bunch of upgrades in our manufacturing, we can remove a lot of people from that supply chain. I don't think it's quite 180. I think we're still going to need to build another housing thing. And especially because we're going to add more industry here in this episode, let's just go ahead and do that. So Now that said, we absolutely can do some more upgrading. So I would say let's do that. Really, all of them here. Because that's what's required to actually get all 4 of these running continuously. This whole set being assembly 5s. That should be a decent amount of computing, but we're doing okay. This 4th data center is officially full and doing just fine. This is now built. Folks should be moving in, and we don't even have to wait for that if we don't want to. That's a good start, at least. And now that these are all, there we go, churning, I think this is going to get a lot more. We're going to see if we can actually keep it up. I'm not sure. Because this is 6 times 4, so this is 24 electronics per minute. And by the way, I think this is going to have to get flipped directions because this is now going to be 200 recycling. But we said we're consuming 24 already per minute out there. We're making 36, and this is exactly as much as we're making microchip-wise. We might not even be keeping up on electronics 2 out here, frankly. But 24 out of 36 already, and then another 12. That's it. That's our total balance here. So if we can actually afford to keep all of this going at once, we are consuming all of it immediately already. So we'll see how it goes. I do worry we're going to have to reinforce here too. But this seems to be a copper issue, which is hopefully getting resolved. There we go, as our copper mine gets back into pace. Let's just help it out here slightly. There we go. Yeah, we're definitely good on brine. Like, that filled up fast. Very cool. This, not so much. Suppose we actually have to allow the export. And there it goes. This probably should get boosted then too. Oh, power looks great, huh? Definitely don't regret deleting that massive set of coal power we had out here last time. All right, what did we just unlock? We just unlocked, nice, the rocket assembly and rockets. Okay, so we have unlocked the rocket assembly, and I have paved what I think is going to be at least our starter space center with this new reinforced surface that we unlock along with the whole rocket technology. It is exactly functionally identical to every other surface. It costs a concrete, it gives you 20%, but hey, if it comes with the rockets, let's make it associated with our rocket setup, right? So let's take a look at these buildings. So the first of the 2 things that we have unlocked, in addition to building a rocket itself, are the 2 buildings required to build and launch a rocket. So let's take a look at them. This is the rocket assembly. You have to put together a rocket before you can launch it, naturally. And then there's a launch pad as well. So, as I understand it, we'll build a rocket here, the rocket will roll over here, and then it'll launch. Now, each of these buildings require a couple different things, as you can see. But this launch pad is also, not that we have anything unlocked quite yet, where we will place deliveries to be launched into orbit. So we'll need some supporting, maybe storage infrastructure over here. I don't think we'll need to assemble anything too much. There is also fuel required, and we will have to hook all that up too. And it needs some water to suppress the sound, I suppose. So I was thinking about where exactly we want to put this on the island, and it'd be pretty cool to launch from like up here or something. I think it would look neat, but At the same time, the logistics of all of that, getting all the way up there and everything, seems a little difficult. So maybe if we really feel like it later, we can always relocate. But I think for now, right across from our aluminum makes the most sense. We're going to end up manufacturing all the parts that are required to go into this out of aluminum. So I think we're at least going to start out looking like this. And I don't really know exactly what all of our various manufacturers are going to look like yet. So let's, explore this and adjust along the way. But basically, I think these are our two key components here. So I suppose we might as well get going here. So as you can see, in order to launch a rocket, we're going to need these composite panels, quite a few of them, in addition to steel and electronics too. We're also going to need a bunch of vehicle parts 3 just to build this thing. And it takes a chunk of workers too, which we have, but it takes a chunk of workers. So I guess let's get started. Seems like as good a spot as any, and we have plenty of room around if we need to, build our manufacturing in a convenient way. We certainly can do that. So let's get both of these going. See how it works. The other thing we should probably think about doing, if we have to export these vehicle parts 3, is to actually have a location for doing that. And I guess there's space here, kind of cuts off this. So maybe we do more like here. These can also be used for export, right? It was one of the things, actually, there's a pretty good contract for coal, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I mean, that's not bad. We might use that in the future. Right now, though, we have to intermittently, not continuously, intermittently boost these to keep up with vehicle parts 2 export demand. So these are probably actually good candidates for upgrades to the Assembly 5. So, in fact, let's just do that real quick. The other part of it is that our electronics supply blipped for a moment or two there. It's hard to keep up with all the rubber. I think we are probably, as you can see, since we're pretty continuously boosting all of this, we're probably going to need to do some work around here. Maybe later this episode. Let's keep an eye on it. I have a feeling, because we're going to need ammonia to make the fuel gas required to launch these fellas, I think we're going to have to do some work there. But here we are. This seems probably like overkill, but we'll take it for now. Burst these down for a bit. It's actually getting to the point now where when it's really cruising here, our little unit delivery trucks cannot actually keep up with all of the pace at which we consume steel here. This is also true when our construction parts factory really gets ripping. So something to keep in mind there. Our last mile delivery of intermediate manufactured goods model is starting to show some cracks here. Now, don't get me wrong, we're not going to rebuild all of this, directly connected to its own steel plant in each of these cases. But this is the trade-off. It's a model that served us very well so far, obviously, but, that's part of it, for sure. We, I think, are just going to leave things as is for now. But it's not going to get better, put it that way. All right, let's quickly get ourselves a lift here. Go like so, save priority out here. Not that we're using it for anything right now, but just in case. Go in here, change directions, and maybe even move it over one so that we can have a nice aesthetically pure connection there. Neat. Built. Now we're still catching up here on parts 2, because again, it's pretty hard to keep the steel coming. So I think maybe we'll just save the Unity. I think functionally it's not actually making us any faster because we can't keep up with all of the inputs, but we'll take a look at it in a moment, see if it's piling up, and if so, we can burst again. We are officially out of oil in this patch, which means we can deconstruct all of this, and this little ghost of a train station never ended up getting used because we didn't need this during the period where train transport made sense. Also, seems like our haul trucks taking the iron ore over is not the end of the world right now. It's certainly not creating a throughput bottleneck, which is good and obviously important. Get that out of the way. So good, we're feeling good about that. We're also just ripping through research, by the way. These 4 labs can really take down, especially a slightly outdated technology, right? This is only about a 5K research compared to the more like 15 out here. But that's pretty good. We actually can't even continue researching until we launch ourselves a space station. So I think what we'll probably do here instead is say, let's grab consumer electronics, because it'd be nice to build that this episode as well. All right, but hey, look at this. So, I don't know. I guess the first thing that it's at least obvious we will need at minimum is some water. So, sure, right? Well, let's start here. And then, if we want to build a rocket, it's going to require steel and electronics too. It's also going to require these composite panels. So, if composite panels also require steel and electronics too, think about the way that we set up our vehicle depot, right? We have some stuff we supply raw, we have some stuff that we manufacture, we have some stuff that we do both of, or use for both rather. And actually, we need to make composite panels first. We will also presumably make these composite cores, but that's a misclick, whoopsie. But all right, so aluminum, which is here. Suppose we could run a belt. Let's keep an eye on it. Well, we're just going to do some minimum viable testing first. I don't really know how this is going to work scaling-wise, right? So let's not over-engineer something we don't know is going to be particularly functional either. So let's just try this out for a bit. All right. Let's maybe just run. Actually, let's grab that electronics too, right? As well. But we know that we're going to need plastic here, but only here as far as we can tell. Same with aluminum. And then steel. We know we need to also run straight through. Electronics to directly in here as well. And there you go. So this is going to make 32 a minute, assuming we can supply it, which we can. So this is going to take a few minutes to make a rocket. I think that's okay. We can also boost it, I suppose. What's a quarter of a unity at this stage of the game? All right, well, that's going to take a moment, so let's come back and check on that. I don't think you're supposed to be churning out like 3 rockets a minute, but we will. Oh, geez. We will handle the maintenance 3 issue before we do anything. Yeah, so this is an electronics 2 issue. This is a silicon poly issue, which means, what, are we out of sand or something? No, we don't have the power to run the hydrogen? Yeah, Not great. All right, so then we need to... Yeah, we have these on surplus power only. That will not work, unfortunately. Fortunately, we make enough of this that it should flood the system real quick, and we do prioritize it out here as well. This is for overflow only. So that's good. We are going to need to get that moving quickly though, because that is torching our data centers. That's all right. Gotta have a good maintenance crisis every once in a while. Keeps you on your toes. Yep, and of course that's gonna mess up our assemblies as well. Okay. Well, maintenance 3 is recovering. We'll let that bounce back for a bit. And check in over here on our rocket. Wow, and already, right? There's our composite panels. I think we probably need to give ourselves a bit of a storage buffer here, because we'll use these in other things, right? This is all very temporary as we learn. This is an exploratory setup, right? But I think that'll be worth doing for now. All right, and where are we eating our Unity right now? Because it's not looking great. Are we missing household appliances? Yeah, because electronics. We're actually copper limited, which is pretty wild. I think we're going to boost half of this setup for now. And gosh, try to pull back somewhere else. All right, so doing some quick math, right? We have 6 of these machines, and they are taking 6 microchips each. That is how we're getting all 36 of our microchips consumed. But 6 times 12 electronics 2 is, 72 electronics 2. And essentially, right now, continuous production of electronics 3 is taking up 6 of these 10 machines. And we use these a lot of other places. This might not be sufficient scale. Now we could upgrade all of these manufacturers and double their throughput, but we will have to match the raw input requirements as well. And we definitely don't have the copper throughput. We might have the glass if we're supplementing it over here, which we are. And we might even actually have the poly. So here's what we could do. This whole setup is boostable. This half, right? Now this half isn't, because it's Arc 2s. And one of my complaints that you know already about Arc 2s is that they're not boostable. And that's kind of why we left half of this capacity as a proper old school blast furnace setup. So I think maybe at least to burst it down, we'll do that. But obviously, that's not sustainable, and we'll still have to boost 50% of all of this too. Although here, I suppose we could simply upgrade all of these. Maybe we'll even do, but you can't do half of 5, but you can do 3 of 5 on each, which will get you at least half. So let's try this, see how long we can sustain it, and even if that answer is not very long, it'll be helpful for a moment or two. I don't even think we can, with this crusher, sustain that, but that's life. And as you can see, we've had to pause on the research here. I think we can trickle it in. I would like to continue to make some progress there, but it'll have to do for now. So our household appliance supply is a little low. This is primarily because we're struggling on electronics, and that's resolving itself. But that said, I would like us to be able to bounce back from something like that a little more flexibly. So we are going to build the last of these 4, and if we need to, of course, we can double them again by upgrading. Well, all right, look at that. That's our first rocket. Missed him rolling over here, but I think he came out here and posted up over here at the launch pad, which is cool. As you can see, we don't have anything to put in the payload quite yet, and what we'll need to do is put in station parts, as well as a bit of hydrogen and oxygen. Now, we can make these directly on site from an electrolyzer using the water that we already have, right? So maybe we'll do that. Yeah, so it's 2-to-1 oxygen. We actually need, right, like multiples more of hydrogen than oxygen. Okay. So maybe what we'll do instead is also have a hydrogen storage over here. That probably makes the most sense. With a little bit of a balancer over here. So I think we go like this. Remove this, have a single storage here, but run it over, probably clean up the pipes later. We'll run it up and over this way. And then we will need to build these station parts, right? Now, composite cores. That's the other piece we set up to maybe make over here, right? So we'll need these composite panels. We'll also need steel and electronics too. A little funky, but it should work. For an experimental prototype, I think that will get us going. Alright, so from Composite Core Basic, which we have a decent pile of here, we have to turn this into Station Parts Basic. That's going to require 2 things that we haven't made yet. First is solar cells. Nope, not that. First is solar cells. There we go. The other is chemical fuel. Chemical fuel is made in a chemical plant too. Now we have to make this on site, can't transport it, which is too bad because this is a much smaller volume than all of these individually, but it is what it is. Ammonia and fuel gas is definitely going to be our limiter. I think we might end up needing to revamp the refinery a little bit before we can supply this, but it is what it is. We'll figure it out along the way. Alright, welcome back. I think this should do the whole setup, actually. Ended up tweaking a couple things around, and it's definitely a very compact, spaghetti-full mess, but it's a prototype. We're just trying to produce the goods. We'll figure out what it should look like, scaled up, optimized, balanced, etc. later. This will do for now. We just want to launch a rocket today, see how it goes. So, tracing it back from these station parts, which is the thing we need to truck on over there. We're making the chemical fuel at the chemical plant. It's receiving aluminum, nitrogen, and fuel gas via pipes here. It's being mixed with solar cells, which we're making over here from steel down the ways, silicon poly, and glass. I also added an overflow storage for solar cells. I realized, you know what, like I've been saying all playthrough that I just don't think they're worth the effort for what you get out of them energetically. But why don't we just prove that, I guess, right? Let's actually test it out and show it off and see if we agree or not. And you know, if we're right, then we're right. Great, we showed it. But if we're not, well, that would be nice to know. So why not? A little bit of overflow over there. Last thing, of course, is then connecting back up to our Composite Core Basic. So let's get this whole thing going. Give it a moment, see how it runs. Check back in a second. All right, well, while we're waiting, we are accumulating some solar cells. We're hung up on ammonia. It's gonna come, but slowly. We definitely need to do some refinery work. But hey, in the meanwhile, let's try out a solar panel. This fella, decent sized footprint, but manageable because it doesn't have any input or output requirements. We could place him really anywhere, including way the heck up here. so that's okay. He costs 10 construction parts for, fine, whatever, 120 of these solar panels. And he makes 150 kilowatts. Just to be clear, right? 150 megawatts would be half of our current capacity. That's 1,000 times less. So, I don't know, sure, right? Let's try a couple out. Let's see if we even notice. And that's before we even get to the part where we talk about how they only work when it's sunny out. But sure, right? Let's start a little farm out here. Nice thing we don't have to connect them to the grid, as always in this game. That part is at least solved, but here we go. So now we have 1/3 of 1 megawatt. Look at that little sliver. Isn't that wonderful? It's 0.1% of our total power generation. Now look, it's free. Well, it's not even, because it's maintenance too, right? I was going to say it's free, so we should just keep adding these, because why wouldn't you? But it does require a tiny bit of maintenance too. But for this to actually get up to any sort of real, meaningful contribution to our electric grid, it is going to require a pretty decent amount of maintenance as well. But what the heck, why not? We can afford it. And we can use some power. Maybe it eventually will be a half-decent contributor. Let's see. And hey, right on time, I think that's finally our first shipment of ammonia, which is pretty cool. That means that our first bit of chemical fuel is coming out. And there it goes. Immediately consumed in the space station parts step. We did make a little bit of what I realized was kind of an unnecessary buffer for composite core basics, so we're gonna run those in first before we bother making more. Save a little bit on the electronics too is really the most precious part of this assembly chain, but it'll work for now. The other thing that's nice about this, it's not huge volumes that are actually required, right? So it'll take a second to build up a bit of a buffer here on the line itself, and then of course, you know, we will have to make the parts. But hopefully this isn't huge volumes coming in. If it is, we'll have to figure it out. Just so that you know where my head's at, I'm looking over at this refinery and we're running at least half of it boosted. We really could just add some general extra capacity. We could also specifically add otherwise unnecessary capacity in sour water and then trade slag for sour water. Why on earth would we import a waste product? Because we kind of need the sulfur. It's running low everywhere around the base. It's hard to keep up making acid. This is occasionally an issue. I had to cut down on our fertilizer trains because there just wasn't enough to justify sending 2 and running that traffic. We're starting to build a little bit back up now. Point being, we would have a lot more productive uses for additional sulfur and ammonia. And I'm over here boosting the generation of ammonia through this chemical plant, you know, supplemental method that consumes a decent amount of hydrogen as well. So I think we'll probably end up doing that here, probably in relatively short order. But I just want to focus on getting this first rocket up in the air, because I think that's enough space station parts. We only need 40 if I remember correctly. So hopefully we'll get those transported across the tarmac here, basically, and we'll be able to launch. Check it out. I think we have everything that we need. Okay, so I think it's time. Space station interface down here. Let's deploy it. So this will take 2 rockets, because a single one has a payload of 40, I think. But yeah, then we should be able to
5, 4, 3,
send her off.
2, 1, liftoff.
How cool is that? We've done it. We've launched a rocket. Well, we're not done now. A very cool moment in our playthrough. But as they say, still a lot of things to explore. So we're going to keep doing that. Once upon a time, that was the final milestone of the game. But as they have continued to develop, obviously there's more now, which is cool. So we'll need another rocket. And you know what? Why don't we just keep making them? We're going to need them. But we'll let that run for a bit. Now, eventually, we're not there yet, but eventually we're going to have to run a certain amount of rockets continuously to supply a crew and to rotate them out and bring them back home and all of that, but also to feed them and send them medical supplies and stuff. Fortunately, we're not tied to that yet, which is good, because we're not ready from a supply chain perspective to do that yet. But we have launched our first rocket, which is pretty cool. Well, just like the game isn't over when the rocket is launched, this episode isn't quite over yet either. I do want to at least take a peek at consumer electronics as our last potential aluminum use. I've mentioned before, we don't really know exactly. I could look up on the wiki and try to estimate it, but let's just wait. 13%. I'm curious how many we'll actually have to supply. And the concern here is actually less around aluminum and maybe more around Electronics 3. We're doing as well as we ever have, actually. On Electronics 3, we are full for now. And that is even true on servers, which is pretty cool. We are backing up even, like finally caught up on and backing up on Electronics 2 as well. So we're feeling good here, or as good as we can with our existing setup without really strongly reinforcing it to sort of fundamentally step change it, which may have to happen. But still, you know, if it's, even if it's, you know, 4 machines, right? Like we have in our other Unity supplying sources, we're looking at, you know, 8 more. And we, just as a reminder, we produced 36. So let's see. And there goes rocket number 2. That should supply the remaining 40 that we need. We're doing okay on production here generally. Oh, we need to turn our composite core production back on. Good. Get rid of that ugly bit of spaghetti. But yes, a couple spares over here at least. So here we go. We're getting just the tiniest amount of Unity ever, and 10% bonus to our research efficiency. And every once in a while, we're gonna have to bring up some station parts for maintenance to keep these bonuses rolling. Okay, understood. Hey, so by the way, this is what it looks like. I'm finally actually catching it on camera. This is what it looks like when our rocket rolls over there. takes a minute. It's not fast. Once we go to speed 3, then he's a little bit faster. I don't know that he's fast. All right, consumer electronics. All right, so here's where we're at with consumer electronics. If we want to supply them continuously, that's 21.6. Now we don't need to make them for anything else, at least not yet. We could use them for exporting. They're decent ratio contracts that go along with that, but as roughly predicted, we need 4 of these to make 24, which will be enough for 22, essentially. And that does mean that we would need to go through 8 electronics too, which I don't love doing. I don't. But at the same time, I don't know, I kind of want to do it. And so maybe what it means is that we aren't running research as continuously. We're already dropping down to 50% anyway. So I don't know, let's give it a shot. We can always turn it back off, right? So the question becomes, where do we want to place this? Where do we want to build it? You know, previously we've been supplying our modules, pretty close here, nearby to where we actually put the goods module to supply that. And I wouldn't mind doing that again here, except we're a little bit out of room, right? We could try to rearrange a couple things and create a little bit more space in here, that's possible. We don't really need this, for example. We could probably clear all of that out, but we got to get 4 assemblies in here somewhere. And that's really going to be, I think, our limiter on space. It's going to be pretty difficult to get a whole nother row like this in on this side anywhere that I can see. So then the question becomes, well, what about out here? Well, this whole area is quite a mess of our own creation, of course. And I think that the medical goods in particular are going to need a revamp. But we could try to create a little bit of space towards the edge here, at least, and maybe produce them here and sort of move a couple of these markets down. For example, this stupid market is empty anyway, so it's actually kind of decent timing to delete it. So if we got rid of it, made some space there, this actually has some food in it, which is a good thing, I suppose. This guy is super flexible, right? We'll have to make sure that it's built before we delete it over there, but it's the internet. That is not a problem for us to supply elsewhere, and we can move that around as we need to in the future. I kind of want to preserve this area. One of the things that I want to do to try to fix, among other things, this train traffic, but also just make better use of this space and save our trucks, is you'll remember when we built this train station originally, we had talked about it would be better to connect up here as it is, like directly, but we couldn't do that while we were in the middle of making the switch, right? But we could just move all of this over. It'd be a one-time cost, a not insignificant one, just given how much stuff we're talking about, but I think it'd be worth doing. So I do want to make sure that this rough area is, available for markets to be connected directly to a train station. By the time we get up here, though, I kind of don't mind. I think this would be fine. And again, we can always move that too. It's a little silly that you get a connection through a blueprint like this, but if we have to deal with our trucks thinking it's real, I guess we can live with the settlement thinking it's real too. So let's go ahead and build this. And once it's built, we'll delete this one. And we'll get ourselves the consumer electronics module maybe there. This. We still obviously are going to need more space than this. Here's a thought I had. This is not running 24/7. It's a chemical plant. This is a pretty low volume requirement. It's also a chemical plant. We could maybe actually save some space by asking these to double up. and then just having a filter here. So I think we're going to try that real quick. All right, there we go. I think that's good. Keep one of them boosted to catch back up. And I suppose we'll need to move this over, delete this, and put a filter on the output over here. Sorry for the jump here, folks, but turns out ran out of storage space while recording, so lost the last, I don't know, 2 minutes. You didn't miss too much. We've got this whole setup working, I think, roughly speaking. We're filtering out, or filtering in, I guess, our disinfectant, which goes along here as previously hooked up, but then we allow to continue everything else, which in this case just means the graphite, and it comes out here to be disposed of. It's pretty small volumes, right? It's been 4 in the last couple of minutes. So I actually do think this is going to work, at least for now, which is great. Buys us time to not have to upgrade it quite yet. I think when we get to, we'll have to supply medical supplies to the space station, and that's probably going to be the forcing function that makes us sort of professionalize this, but this will do, I think, for now, to keep our people mostly happy, except when there's a flu. We'll see. We'll address it when we have to. The other thing you missed was, well, I just set up the actual consumer electronics module. It's pretty straightforward. You've seen me do these four in a row modules with 3 inputs a million times, a million ways, and in fact, I really did just copy paste what was going on over here already. But to at least show you the inputs, we pulled the plastic from over here, because why wouldn't we? That's way easier. And we're bringing in aluminum and small volumes of electronics 3 as well. So it's working. We are, in fact, supplying all that we need, which is great. And it's given us a pretty good chunk of Unity, right? So it gives us a pretty solid baseline amount. That 3 is not bad, but more importantly, right, is that it allows us to increase our combo bonus. And because we're supplying not just water, not just power, not just household goods, not just household appliances, but now also consumer electronics, we're at 125% multiplier bonus for everything, right? So we get that across not just the consumer electronics that we're providing, but to everything. At least everything in this set of categories, which is pretty great. We'll certainly take that. We are swimming in Unity now, which is wonderful. We're not great about supplying the internet because it's one of the first things we remove when we have power troubles, which is definitely something we're going to have to address. So I think that's maybe a decent segue. I'm going to leave it here for the episode. We've done what we set out to do. We have, when we have power to do it, we have an entire aluminum production set up. That's pretty good. We have also turned that aluminum into rockets. And here's another one rolling out, right? It would be doing something if we had something for it to do, but we're not ready to launch until we need more maintenance here, which is soon. But we have a space station. It's not giving us much yet right now, frankly. The Unity is nothing, and the research efficiency bonus is pretty underwhelming as well, but it is the first step, the first stage towards something pretty cool, right? So we've got rockets ready to go whenever we need them. We also are, for now at least, able to provide consumer electronics too. So we've got a lot going for us here. Unity is fantastic. We have a pretty stable economy, generally speaking, with all of these contracts that we've been bringing in the last episode or two. I think if I'm looking at what we need next, there are still a couple spots in our economy that are a bit wobbly before we can expand sort of the space program in real proper earnest, right? Because we have to add electronics 4 and titanium smelting and a whole bunch of other stuff in pretty short order, and we're barely hanging on in electronics 3 right now. Let's see how it goes. Well, hey, as always, I hope you have enjoyed yourself. I certainly have. If you did, be sure to stop by again for the next one, see what it is that we get up to. But until then, have a great rest of your day, and bye-bye.